All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming tonight. We have a really exciting meeting ahead of us. We're going to have a few items on the agenda today. So let me link that in the chat really quick, just to make sure everyone has it. But on our agenda tonight, we are covering three main topics, as well as all of our standard fare. We're going to have a special guest, DA candidate Terry Wiley is going to be coming to speak with us. So at this point, we'll have spoken with all three of the DA candidates, and this will help prepare us for, hopefully in the future, we'll be having a meeting with all of them together, and then we can decide if we are going to endorse and who we're going to endorse. We're also going to discuss our plans for Giving Tuesday, or really for our just general charitable work through the month of November and how we can give back to two great charities. We've got Aisha Wahab and Val Arkin here to talk about the charities we're going to be supporting, the Afghan Coalition and Wiley, both awesome local charities that are doing some great work. And then we're going to follow all of that up with a bylaw amendment section. And so we're going to go through some changes to the bylaws. There's mostly it's clarifying things, getting a few processes in and making sure that everything is nice and clear, so that we have just a real roadmap for not just myself as president, but in the future, whoever is the next president, to have really all of our practices, our general policies and everything laid out in a very clear manner. Since we don't have a separate set of rules for our, our practices, our decorum, some of that is going to be in the bylaws. I added some of that in too, so hopefully you all got that document to review. And so with that, I think we're going to start. So we're just waiting. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty, by the way, and so that's why it's taking us a moment to get started. So with
I'd
that,
like to make a Thanksgiving comment, since this is basically our Thanksgiving meeting. And that is that a lot of wonderful things have happened within the last 12 months that I think we should all be thankful for. And it's helpful in terms of, getting bummed out and being crushed into your homes and not being able to travel because of COVID, to think about the good things. And one of the good things is we've got an awful lot of more Democratic candidates in office. We have a Democratic president, we have a Democratic House, and we have mostly a Democratic Senate, and those things are very much on the list to be thankful for. We are making some really good, serious progress nationally and locally with our wonderful new Democratic candidates. Also, we should be thankful that science is triumphing over a lot of evil things, including the COVID virus. And we now have three really good quality vaccines, and availability is great on these things. And just things are just so much better than they were last November. So I just wanted to say that I'm personally quite thankful also for being a member of this club and having such good people to work and to talk with and to have these meetings and to make an impact on our community in a positive way. So that's my list of Thanksgiving thanks.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. That was a great way of kind of kicking us off and talking about what I look forward to of being a really great November and really great rest of the year. I think we do have a lot to be thankful for, so I appreciate you putting it in perspective. Thank you. So with that, we were able to get Terry on, which is great. Sorry again about the technical problems. It was definitely my screw up, and so I appreciate you working through and getting it on. So I just want to start off our meeting with Terry Wiley. He's a DA candidate in the upcoming race for Alameda County. Terry has a great deal of experience, and I don't want to take too much of the floor time from him. I really want to give him a chance to talk about himself. So I just really want to thank you for coming out, talking to our club and meeting with us. I appreciate you being here tonight and spending your time with us. And so I'll turn the floor over to you, Mr. Wiley.
All right, Evan, thank you so much. And thank the Tri-Valley Dems for having me this evening. Sorry that we had some technical problems getting on, but it's really a pleasure to meet with you. And let me just tell you a little bit about who I am. As Evan has said, my name is Terry Wiley. I'm with the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. I'm our Chief Assistant District Attorney, which means I'm the #2 ranking District Attorney in Alameda County, and I'm the first African-American Chief Assistant in the history of Alameda County. You know, I come from the Bay Area. I'm a product of the Bay Area. You know, I'm the youngest of 12 kids. My dad died when I was 7. So I did not come up with any illusions that I would have to really get out there and work in order to make something of myself. You know, so I'm someone who came to the job who really understands the underdog and understands how what life is sometimes like to be looked at as something other than. And, you know, I brought my life experiences, as we all do, to whatever our profession is or our job is. But, you know, our job is unique in that, you know, we make decisions every day that impact people's lives, both victims, but also defendants. And so you have to bring a certain determination, but you have to bring a certain amount of compassion and empathy to the job. And that's why I think it's important that you have to understand the underdog. You know, but the other thing that I think is very important, given my background and where I come from, is that, you know, this really didn't have to be said to me, but I make sure that I say it to all of our DAs, is that, you know, the criminal justice system is not about wins and losses. When you look at cases, you know, what you are really being asked to do is look at justice. That's what you're searching for. And justice can come in many different forms. Sometimes you can have a case where the person has committed an offense, all of the elements are there, it's a provable case. But when you look at that person, you have to ask yourself, is this really someone who should be in the criminal justice system? Or is it just a kid who made a dumb mistake and needs an opportunity to make up for that mistake and keep his life going in the right direction? And then there's others that require a more traditional approach because they've done something very serious or created some serious harm to someone. So I come to the job with that philosophy, and it's the philosophy that's kind of guided me throughout my career in the DA's office. You know, I believe in communities being safe, but I also believe that you have to have a system of justice that is fair to everyone, which is why our campaign is called One Justice. And what One Justice for All really means is that it doesn't, you know, there shouldn't be one system of justice for someone white and another for someone Black, or for someone rich and for someone poor. Everybody should be able to come to a criminal justice system that treats everyone equally and protects everyone equally. And, you know, in my career at the district attorney's office, I've basically managed every division in the office with the exception of our consumer and environmental protection division. I'm also our director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I created our office's 3-module training that requires every employee of the district attorney's office to go through implicit bias training. The first module deals with the science of implicit bias. The third deals with implicit bias and gives you a historical perspective of not only the Bay Area, but Alameda County specifically. And we show them how maps were drawn in the 1930s and contribute today to some of the areas that back in the 1930s, they were the lowest socioeconomic areas, and they remain that today. And so we show them how government and private actions contributed to some of the way our criminal justice system looks today. And the whole idea is that we want them to bring a certain understanding to the job, but we also want them to bring a certain amount of compassion and empathy, so that when people come across their desk, they have an understanding of how maybe some of these cases got to their desk, and they can look at them with a certain amount of compassion and empathy as we try to deal with these cases. I'm the only candidate in this race that has run the juvenile division. You know, our juvenile division, when I got there, we were just coming out of an era of really kind of over incarcerating everyone. And by the time I left our juvenile division, we were, there was a 70% reduction in the number of juveniles that were being held in the juvenile, in juvenile hall. And today, what I established beginning in 2013 continues today. So that today in Alameda County's juvenile system, we only hold the most serious offenders. And so we average about 43 juveniles per week in the hall, and they're there for murder, attempted murder, armed robbery, only the most serious and violent offenses. I really believe that there must be equity in the administration of justice, but equity in the administration of justice begins with our office. And does our office reflect the community that it serves? And what we're talking about is, we want to look at the people that make up the Alameda County DA's office and make sure that we reflect the wonderful diversity of Alameda County. And this is why, and I'll end with this. How does a 30-year DA who's the chief assistant, how's that the person that can bring the kind of change that we want to see in our criminal justice system? Well, when some of the leading civil rights attorneys in the country, including Benjamin Crump, who represents the family of George Floyd and a number of high-profile civil rights cases, John Burris, the Bay Area's preeminent civil rights attorney, Lanita Baker, who represented the family of Breonna Taylor back in Louisville, Kentucky. These are attorneys that have a very sharp eye on the criminal justice system and the manner in which it treats people, and they push for a system that's fair to everyone. They've all endorsed my candidacy because they know that their knowledge of me and what I represent, that I will be a guardian of a system of justice that is fair to everyone that comes through the system, and that will hold everyone accountable. That's why I've been endorsed by Congressman Eric Swalwell, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, a host of elected officials. And when our rank and file of the DA's office voted as to who was the person they would endorse, I got the endorsement of our rank and file 75% to 25%. So that's Terry Wiley, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Awesome, thank you. Well, that answers my first question is, are you able to stay for a little while and answer questions?
Yes, absolutely.
So, thank you for that great introduction. I really appreciate it. And I always want to turn it over to our members first because they always have such great questions. Just a reminder, if you can, just put your hand up either in chat, or if you want, just raise your hand and I'll recognize you so we don't all talk at once. But does anyone have any questions for Mr. Wiley? Ellis, go ahead.
Hi, Terry. I'm sorry that I missed the beginning of your presentation. I was begging to get my printer working. Didn't work. But I was at the Alameda County Central Committee meeting, last meeting, which was the beginning of the month, first Wednesday of the month. And at that meeting, there was a letter sent to Rob Bonta to investigate allegations that people in Nancy O'Malley's office used public facilities, that is, government-owned facilities, to campaign for Nancy O'Malley, I guess in the last go-round. And Pamela Drake presented evidence. She had,
Pamela Price.
excuse me, Pamela Price. There's somebody else named Pamela Drake, but that's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Pamela Price. She said that under the Freedom of Information Act or some such thing, she had obtained emails that pertained to Nancy O'Malley's campaign, and those emails were on government email addresses. And she had allegations that several members of Nancy O'Malley's staff engaged in that. Now, I know that Nancy O'Malley's got north of 200 people working for her. Maybe it's even double that. Are you one of the people that are cited in this evidence that
Ellis.
Pamela Price has? No,
Ellis.
that's an important thing. This
Well,
is my
first, let me say this, that I am not going to defend the use of using government emails for campaign purposes. There is an email in there from me, and I'm not making any excuses. I wasn't running for DA. I wasn't really that involved in Miss O'Malley's last campaign, but I am a leader in the district attorney's office. And there had been representations made by Pamela Price's campaign that our office lacked diversity and that they were going to events and they only saw white DAs, and the office did not reflect the diversity of what our office really looked like. And so I had a number of our lawyers of color come to me and express their displeasure that our office was being represented in that manner. And and I was also one of our recruiting. I was the director of our recruitment and development, and really was tasked with going out and trying to recruit lawyers of color to improve the diversity of our office, and I was successful in doing that. And so there was a debate coming up between Nancy O'Malley and Pamela Price. So I just said, okay, the DAs came to me and expressed their displeasure. So I sent all of the African Americans in the office an email that basically to inform them that there was a debate coming up, and that if you wanted to represent what our office really looks like, that's an event you can attend. And I'm not making any excuses for sending that email, but that was how that came to be and how I wound up sending that email. It was really kind of in response to people coming to me seeking some sort of solution to what they felt was our office being misrepresented in terms of what we really looked like. And but I am not going to defend that conduct. And if I'm the district attorney of Alameda County, I will ensure that our office goes through ethical training in how not to use government emails. And but I'm not excusing that conduct. It's unacceptable.
It doesn't sound like you did anything wrong, and I'm glad you cleared that up. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to do that. There's a second small matter. I've heard that Rebecca Bauer-Cahan has endorsed you. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes.
That holds a lot of weight. Aside from Eric Swalwell, I would say the most weight around here. So good.
Me and Rebecca, we had a long talk about just my philosophy, and I really think the reason she endorsed me is I'll tell you a real quick story. I'm a member of the National Bar Association. National Bar Association is the country's largest African American lawyer association. In fact, that's how I met Ben Crump when we were young lawyers. And so me and full disclosure, me and Ben kind of grew up together in the National Bar Association together. And this year I received the National Bar Association's Heman Sweat Civil Rights Award. And I was the first prosecutor in the 97-year history of the National Bar Association to receive the Heman Sweat Civil Rights Award. They, you know, the organization doesn't really like prosecutors that much. You know, it's really an organization that is centered around civil rights attorneys and really protecting the rights of the underdog. And so I was the first prosecutor that came through the organization that, well, there was another prosecutor, Randy Jones, who's also awesome, but I was one of the first prosecutors to come through and that they listened to. And that, you know, I've always been someone that it is about justice, and justice comes in different forms. But I also believe in keeping communities safe, and that, you know, if you're out there sticking guns in people's faces and creating, causing serious harm, then, you know, we're gonna deal with that. We prosecute cases, and that's what we do as a prosecutor's office. But at the same time, I think that it's very, very important that everyone that comes through the system feels that they got a fair shake. And I'm going to ensure that that happens. And that's really what I've stood for my whole career.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Sean Comagai has very high regards for you too. And I think
Thank
he's
you.
vice mayor of Dublin.
Yeah, I've received Sean's endorsement also.
Yes.
And he's a member of this club.
Yes, no, I love Sean Kumagai, and you know, all of the people that endorse me, you know, I've talked to them. I didn't know them prior to their endorsing me, and you know, we talked about, you know, who I am, what my philosophy is, and you know, I came away with their endorsement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alice, for the questions, and thank you, Terry. I think next up is we have Councilwoman Arkin.
I'm sorry, you cut out. Evan, did you just call on me?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. That just
You're
cut
up.
out for a brief moment. Okay, thank you. And good evening, Mr. Wiley. I just have a question regarding police reform. Can you
Yeah.
just explain what sets you apart from the other candidates?
Well, you know, I think it's what sets me apart from the other candidates is that I have a record of holding everyone accountable. You know, I know a lot of people say, well, we're going to have police accountability and we're going to hold people accountable. First of all, let me say this about the police. I think they have a very difficult job. And I have a world of respect for every police officer that puts his or her life on the line to keep our community safe. I think but on the other side of the coin, you know, they're one of the few professions that can engage in justifiable homicide and shoot and kill someone, and because it's in the scope of their duties. And that is that's a lot of power to give someone. So I think that, but as a result of their having such power, they're held to a higher standard. So when I think you look at reforms, I mean, you can have all the reforms that you want in the world, but you have to be willing to hold everyone accountable and hold everyone to the standard that the community expects. And I think that I've done that in my career. In 2000, I was 10 years into my career, and my career was going great. I was loved by the police. I was loved by GAs. Everything's great. And then the Riders case in Oakland occurred. And this was probably the biggest police corruption case in the history of Alameda County, where there was just systematic filing of false police reports, planting evidence, and you know, beating suspects. And instead of taking them to jail, they would have to be transported to the hospital. And it had become almost systemic with this particular group of officers. And the only reason we found out about it is because they were training a new officer. And the new officer, after about the 4th day of training, said, I didn't sign up for this. I can't take this. Well, what was unusual is that officer that resigned was the #1 cadet out of his academy class. So you can only imagine that the officer that led that academy class wanted to know why his cadet that finished off #1 in the class resigned after day 4. So that's how that case broke. Well, then it became a matter of, well, who's going to take this case? Who's going to handle this case when you know that it can impact your career, and that law enforcement is not going to be happy with you prosecuting this case? But, you know, the officer that resigned because he didn't sign up for that. Well, when I chose to become a district attorney, I didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign up for cases where suspects are being beaten, false police reports are being filed on them, and then I'm expected to go into court and seek justice on behalf of the people. I didn't sign up for that. And I wound up taking that case. And it was very unpopular, but I stood by my principles that I came into the office with, and I hold those same principles today. And I think that that's what separates me from the other candidates in this race. Is I think that it's one thing to talk about accountability, what you can do or what you want to do, but I've lived it, and I know what it is like to deal with those kinds of cases, and they're very difficult because, as I say, police officers have a very difficult job, but they have a lot of power and they have to be held to a higher standard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I see a question from Van.
Yeah, Terry, thanks for this, bit of a discussion. And I want to thank you also for coming to the Livermore Indivisible forum yesterday as well. You had a strong showing.
Thank you.
But my question is, accountability is essentially a reactive, process where you have to catch people doing something wrong and hold them accountable. And I'm wondering if there isn't a more proactive process for bringing the various parties into the room and in some kind of format, consortium or whatever, and figure out how to do best practices and adhere to those, or create and adhere to those particular policies that would enable the police departments to understand that, sure, they're going to be held accountable, but this is the way we want you to behave.
Yes. So Ben, there's a couple of things that we've done, and that what I plan on doing when I become the district attorney of Alameda County. One of the things that I did is, well, two things. I looked at offices all around the country, and typically it's pretty well known that the top prosecutor's office in the nation is the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. If you talk to somebody from Manhattan, they'll tell you they will apologize every other sentence because they're so highly resourced. But what makes them one of the top offices is because they're highly resourced, because they have Wall Street, and so they're highly funded. But and what is unique about New York City is, although they have 5 boroughs, those 5 boroughs are controlled by one department. And so you can get a lot of uniformity in terms of how all 5 boroughs are policed. But they have a program called the Crime Strategies Unit. And so I don't know how many of you have heard of ShotSpotter. So many of our big cities have a system called ShotSpotter. So if gunshots go off, the computer immediately alerts the police department that there's shooting in that particular area. Well, what Manhattan does is they do a weekly monitoring of ShotSpotter. So they do long-term surveillance, long-term intelligence, and they know who are the 20% that are probably creating or causing 80% of the violence on the island of Manhattan. So when shots go off in East Harlem, in a particular area of East Harlem, they look at the shot spotter. They know based on their long-term surveillance, who are the 5 to 10 guys in that particular area that are the most active when it comes to violent crime. And so I met with Manhattan for about 3 hours and had them explain the whole system of the crime strategies unit. And I've said, when I'm the district attorney of Alameda County, we're implementing crime strategies in the Alameda County DA's office. But to also follow your point, Van, in the Oakland Police Department, we have a district attorney who sits over in the police department full time. And so that as cases come through the door, they have a district attorney who is assisting them on following proper procedures, assisting them with strategies on how to conduct in the investigation. If they get stumped somewhere in the investigation, they have someone there who's there to assist them. I also plan on having a much more robust reliance on data. And let me tell you with some interesting data that we received in 2016. So if you're an African-American and you live in Alameda County, you are 3 times more likely to be stopped by law enforcement if you live in Oakland. If you live in the Tri-Valley area, you are much less likely to be stopped. And if you're stopped, there is a much greater adherence to constitutional conduct, and it's reflected in the data. And so we found it interesting when we got the data back that in areas like the Tri-Valley area, Hayward, Fremont, that if you were a person of color, you were less likely to be stopped in those areas than if you were in Oakland. And the data showed that you were almost 3 times more likely to be stopped if you were in Oakland and if you're African American. And we also saw data that showed as dusk begins to fall and it's more difficult to see who's in the car, you're much less likely to be stopped. And now how did we get this data? Well, two things. We had our own data, but also to the credit of the Oakland Police Department, they partnered with Stanford University. And Stanford University was allowed to ride with the officers for 13 months and their social scientists did a complete workup on the Oakland Police Department. That's where I will make a huge difference in the manner in which the district attorney's office is run. Because see, I'm not going to let that data come into our possession and not do something about it. If I see that there are people that are being singled out because of where they live or how they look, because that's unconstitutional and there's no constitutional basis for conducting policing in that manner. And so, I mean, we have plans to help our police agencies, and there's no agency that's perfect. We all know that the district attorney's office is not perfect. There's no police agencies that are perfect, but where we see problems, we'll address those problems. And we saw it was important to put a DA in the Oakland Police Department to assist them with their investigations. We've done that. If we see issues that are coming to our attention, we'll deal with those issues. And I know that we have some DAs that are going to departments to assist them with training. We've been doing that for a number of years. That hasn't suddenly just happened. There's a chiefs meeting once a month. All of the police chiefs of Alameda County get together with the DA, and issues are addressed. That there may be an issue that we're having with Oakland. There may be an issue that we're having with Livermore. those things get addressed. And I'll give you one example. We've created a program called the CARES program. So you have a lot of people that are dealing with homelessness and mental illness. And, we have to find an alternative to how we deal with the mentally ill. So we created a CARES program in which we partnered with a community-based organization, and in this case, La Familia. And at La Familia in the CARES program, we have housed, or we have working there, a clinical psychologist. We have what's called a peer support specialist, and a peer support specialist is someone who's had a lived experience. They've either been formerly incarcerated or overcome substance abuse and even mental illness, but it's somebody who was down and they made it back. And now they're working so that when we bring someone in that may be having a mental health episode, we not only have a clinical psychologist there, we have somebody who's been where they are, and that can help calm them and give them confidence in the help that we're trying to give them. They also we have clothes, we have food, we get donations from Target and Walmart, so that if somebody is in need of some new clothes, that's available to them. And we're now training all of the departments that, if you're called to Starbucks because a homeless person who clearly is having a mental illness episode, instead of taking that person to Santa Rita, take that person to the CARES program where the person can be treated. And now the other issue, and this is really a more broad discussion that we have to have as a county, is that, there really aren't a lot of what I call acceptable alternatives if you have a person who is, for example, really decompensated and is a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. You're not going to be able to solve that person's problem in 72 hours. You may be able to stabilize them in 72 hours, but we need to find some more longer term solutions for some of the individuals who have been suffering long-term mental illness and maybe out there actually self-medicating with alcohol or drugs. These are issues that we're in discussion about right now.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? You mentioned data in the Stanford Social Science Department assistance. Is there any effort to acquire more comprehensive data and to use mechanisms like artificial intelligence to discover different aspects of crime recognition and data collection?
Yeah, there is a lot of resistance to AI, the use of AI in law enforcement. And there has been found that in some of the programming of the AI, there's been some patterns that I'll just say have been disturbing. And so, and disturbing to the point where it's a question of whether or not the AI as it currently exists is really going to improve the system. So there's a lot of resistance, some by even law enforcement, but there are a lot of community-based organizations that absolutely oppose the use of AI in our criminal justice system. So we're not there yet in terms of the use of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to check, Mr. Wiley, before going on, just to respect your time, we are at the end of what we scheduled for you, but we do have 2 more questions. Are you able to stay for those?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Then next up is Jamie, if you have a question.
Oh my gosh, I look terrible. Sorry, I'm turning my video off. Hi, everybody. Hi, Terry. Thank you so much for coming to our club meeting. My question is really around kind of the war on drugs and with the new laws around legalization of adult use cannabis. One of the questions that I hear a lot of people asking about is, gee, I thought everybody who, was incarcerated because of a low-level offense that had to do with marijuana, they're not out yet. And I thought everybody was supposed to be out. So could you give a little bit of an update on what is happening with that?
We in Alameda County, we have dismissed practically every marijuana conviction
Okay.
that has occurred in Alameda County over the last 20 years. There's about 9,000 cases that are remaining. And the only reason I say they're remaining is that the clerk's office has not been able to process the paperwork. And in fact, it's interesting you asked the question, because I was just notified 2 weeks ago that the clerk's office of Alameda County had finally gotten to that last batch of 9,000 cases. But I'll tell you something else that I personally took on. I've been with the district attorney's office for 30 years. And when I got there, and, in my class, my starting class in Alameda County was myself, Kamala Harris. We're all in the same law clerk class, and we started together in the DA's office. And I remember me and Kamala had been in Alameda County for about 4 years. And, of course, we go out to lunch and we have discussions about what we're seeing in the system. And I remember we went to lunch one day, and, we talked about this war on drugs and how so many people were being caught up in the whole war on drugs that looked like us. It was not unusual back in those days to go into a courtroom and be seated at the DA's table, and every person in the morning and afternoon that came out of the holding cell was African American. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so having been here for 30 years, I felt it was important after the laws were changed regarding marijuana, and knowing what how many of these folks were treated back in the 90s and the first decade of 2000. I put together Alameda County's Expungement Program. So we partnered with the NAACP, and we had the court cooperate with us. And we were the only district attorney's office in the state that was the one initiating the expungements of the records of individuals who had been previously convicted of low-level offenses that were still on their record, and preventing them from being gainfully employed. And so we set up a system where we would meet everyone at the Hayward Library, and we'd have our DAs volunteer on Saturday, and we'd bring our computers in, and we'd run their records to see which offenses qualified to be expunged. We'd help them fill out the paperwork, and it resulted in hundreds of individuals having their records expunged. And we would look at them in court and say, now you can go fill out an application. And when it says, do you have a felony conviction, you can say no.
That's awesome.
And I think that that's where you as a prosecutor have the power to change the system. And if you see that there has been some injustices done, then I think it's incumbent upon us to try and correct and make no mistake. What happened to many of the people in the 1990s that were being arrested for a small baggie of marijuana?
Yep.
It resulted in a lot of injustices, and it resulted in a lot of damage to particularly some of the lower socioeconomic communities in Alameda County, because there were so many Black and brown men that were being taken out of those communities. And many of the young boys in those communities were losing fathers, they were losing role models. And, so what we're trying to do is repair some of that damage.
Yeah, I mean, in full disclosure, Terry, I actually work for a healthcare services agency in Colleen's office, and I lead the cannabis initiative, awareness and prevention campaign. We just launched this huge program, and I don't know if anybody from the DA's office knows about it, but that in my work in doing that, that would always come up. People would always say, yeah, right, you guys aren't really expunging people, and that would come up. So this is great. And I have heard and been in neighborhoods where people have talked about how their fathers got pulled out of families, sons were pulled out, and it just had a huge ripple effect of just really a lot of damage in communities that runs very, very deep. And so many people are very traumatized and have so much anger over it. So there's a lot of work for us to do, but that's great that you're so well versed in this and your data just right off the top of your head. So thank you very much.
And I'll tell you guys a quick story that I tell people about when it comes to expungements, because in 1991, I was selected to go to Africa. Africa did an exchange with the Bay Area. So 6 of us went to Africa and 6 Africans came to the Bay Area. So we're on this, we're in Kruger National Park in South Africa. And one of the rangers was telling me this story. He said, yeah, about 2 months ago, we kept seeing rhinos killed, stomped to death and killed. And we just could not figure it out because we said, well, it's not poachers because nobody's taking the rhino's horns. So they said, well, and they just could not figure out who was killing the rhinos. Well, Kruger National Park does a culling of elephants, which means that they have to control the elephant population in order to manage the park. Well, they had culled many of the male elephants. And so they were left with juvenile male elephants. And they found that it was the juvenile male elephants that were killing the rhinos. And so in order to resolve the problem, they went in and brought in the big old male elephants, and the killing stopped. When the big male elephants were put back into the park and got control of the adolescent elephants. And and sometimes that's exactly what kind of happens in some of these poor communities when you pull the men out of the community, and these adolescents and young men with no experience are left to fend for themselves. I didn't mean to bore you guys.
Yeah, that's a really great story, but that is a really real illustration of what has happened on the streets in our county in those impacted neighborhoods. That's exactly what's happening when people go, why are the young people acting this way? Well, they don't have their models there. They don't have the men there holding them accountable. So I really appreciate that you understand that deeper level. That's really awesome. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have a quick follow-up from chat just to see, is the expungement program the same as Clean Slate?
It is. Okay. Except the expungement program is, Clean Slate was the original program. But what's different about when I say it's really, I should say, expungement clinic, because this is a program we take into the community, as opposed to somebody formally having to come to court, get an attorney and file for the expungement. We brought the program to the community and we streamlined it so that it was a much more streamlined process.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for that. And then I believe our last question will be from Trustee Makashi.
Hi. So I just have one quick question. There's been a lot of debate on school resource officers, and so I would love to know what your vision is for school resource officers. And it's a two-part question. My second question to that is, how can you see that role evolve to be more supporting of restorative practice initiatives versus solely more punitive, that sometimes can come up in concerns in the roles of school resource officers. So I'd love to know more about your vision and loved what you already shared about your work in the juvenile system. I am a huge advocate for providing awareness about the school to prison pipeline. So anyway, would love to hear your insights.
Yeah, so let me just preface my comments by, so I'm on the American Bar Association's Criminal Standards Committee. And this is the committee that sets the criminal standards for the nation, for district attorneys, for US attorneys, for public defenders, for everyone practicing criminal law. We set the standards. And one of the questions that came up was school resource officers, and whether or not as the American Bar Association, what should our position be on school resource officers? And my position is this: the reality is, I think that there are some environments that need school resource officers. I would never say pull school resource officers out of high schools in Chicago, where Chicago has closed down schools, so that now if you live in the area that's controlled by the vice lords, and you now have to walk through the area that because the school that the vice lords control was shut down. So now all the vice lord kids have to go to the school where all the Latin Kings control. And then people want to know why there's a freaking shootout in Chicago. Well, how about you got all these kids that now have to walk through these dangerous territories, and all hell's breaking loose. So from that perspective, but here's what I think has happened with school resource officers. You know, when I took over our juvenile division in 2013, the first person I met with was the superintendent of the Oakland Unified School District. And I said, we have to have a meeting, because when I took a tour of our juvenile facility, I saw too many kids that had come from the Oakland Unified School District. And what I told the superintendent of schools, we will no longer allow you to use this juvenile justice center as your arm of discipline. If two kids get into a fight after school, you're not sending them to juvenile hall. You deal with it. When I was in school and two kids got into a fight after school, I had to go deal with the principal or the vice principal. So as a result of our discussion, the number of kids coming from the Oakland Unified School District dropped by 80%. And because we were no longer allowing that. Secondly, the biggest problem I see, not only with school resource officers, but I see it currently with our whole educational system. I think that in too many instances, they are willing to use the school resource officers against kids of color. I think that there is an unfair application of discipline that is not equally applied. And so part of why I'm somewhat in favor of pulling school resource officers out is because I just don't think the schools have done a very good job with their system of discipline. And I think it is not a fair, and I'm speaking from data. I'm not speaking from anecdotes. I'm speaking from the data that's out there. And in fact, I'll tell you a story. In Lancaster down in Los Angeles, the LA Times did an undercover investigation of the Lancaster School District and found unbelievable disparities with the manner in which their school resource officers were being utilized. And I actually called a friend of mine with the LADA's office, and his name is Bobby Grace. And I said, Bobby, I said, have you read this article in the LA Times today about Lancaster? Because Lancaster is within the jurisdiction of the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. And I was just really surprised that, there was so much disparity in the manner in which discipline was being meted out by that school district. So to answer your question, and I hope it answers your question, I think it's an ongoing discussion that we have to have. I think that in order to, it's like anything in the DA's office. I tell people I'm not very big on one size fits all policies. I think you have to look at cases on an individual basis. I think you have to go off your general principles, but you have to evaluate cases on a case by case basis. And I think you have to do the same thing with school resource officers. You have to look at the environment that the kids are going to school in, because there are some environments that are more dangerous than others. And if that is the case, there may be a proper role for school resource officers to play. I also think that you have to look at the data, and you have to look at, what is the effectiveness of the school resource officers, and are the officers actually their presence making kids feel more safe, I think is also important. So I don't have an overall policy approach, but I do think that the school resource officers is problematic in many cases.
So I appreciate your thoughtful comments and response. I would just add to your point that there is disproportionality in general for incidences with students of color or minority, and that I think it's important to consider how to maybe evolve the role of the school resource officer to blend in with what you were talking about, mental health awareness. And I would love to hear, ways to help bridge that connection and make that stronger. To your point, there are cases in certain environments where there will be crime and that needs to be dealt with. But I really appreciate your thoughtful comments.
So Kelly, let me just tell you one other thing that and this is going on right now. So, I guess I left an impression when I ran our juvenile division, because I haven't been in juvenile since 2017, but whenever anything comes up, they still call me. So I get a call from Brian Ford, who's now the head of the probation department juvenile division. And he called me up. He said, Terry, I'd like to talk to you about truancy. I said, no problem, Brian. And so we then reached out to Drennan Lindsay, one of the deputy chiefs of the Oakland Police Department. So us three got together and we began discussing two subsets of truants. We were seeing a rising level of crime being committed by juveniles. We were attributing a lot of it to truants that were not going to school. And these truants were a group that kind of fall into the traditional truants. They come from very dysfunctional families. They come from low socioeconomic areas, and there's just a lot going on, and nobody's really monitoring whether they're going to school or not. But we then have another subset that is the fallout from COVID. These are kids that never really adjusted to the virtual schooling, and now getting them back into school has been a real challenge. So what I did is I'm convening a meeting with the head of probation and me from the DA's office, Drennan Lindsay from the Oakland Police Department, and the leadership of the Oakland Unified School District Superintendent's Office. And we are going to be meeting to see if we can come up with a model, because the laws have changed in how you can now deal with truants. And the reason the law changed is because the courts were allowed to enforce violations of truancy laws. But what we found, though, is that whenever there was any kind of discipline ordered by the court because some kid didn't go to school, there was a lot of data was coming back showing that it was feeding into the pipeline to prison model, and that so you would have kids that would start off as truants, and because the court was involved and the court was ordering some discipline as a result of not following the court's orders, it was feeding right into the pipeline to prison. So the laws in California changed, which basically took away the court's ability to implement any kind of discipline. So our hands are much more tied in terms of what we can actually do if a kid is now truant. So what I'm doing is convening all of the parties to see, okay, well, this is the state of the law. What can we do to try and get some of these kids that are not going to school back in school? And I think that that's how I plan to operate when I'm the district attorney of Alameda County. We can solve problems. And I think another area where we all have to get together and all of the interagencies have to get together, we've got to come up with a system that can meet the needs of individuals who fall into that longer mental health treatment plan. And we have to find a way to deal with those individuals. Because I met with, and actually I met with the mental health community from the Livermore, from the Tri-Valley area about a month ago. And many of the people on that Zoom call were parents that had children that were system involved, and their children had mental health issues. And, my first question for everyone was, well, given all of your individual situations, how is our system of justice dealing with your child? And I don't even know why I asked that question, because they all tried to talk at the same time. And because everybody was unhappy with the way their children were treated by the system. But what they didn't know about me is that when I was in junior high, I have an older brother who was 19, and it's that 18 to 23 years that if they're going to get struck by paranoid schizophrenia, that's the area that it happens in. My brother was struck by paranoid schizophrenia when he was 19. And so my mom and our family had to navigate my brother for years, just trying to keep him stabilized. And so I personally know the difficulty that parents have to manage in keeping their kids. One, you want them to be safe, but you want them to avoid being system involved. But that's just a difficult lift. And when they do become system involved, you really hope that you have a prosecutor that has some compassion and some understanding of the issue, and not looking at the case just like it's any other case. And I'll make sure, because one of the things I'm going to do with our prosecutors is I learned a lot by meeting with those parents and finding out just how dissatisfied they were with the way the system treated their kids. And we're even talking about taping a virtual discussion with those parents and playing it for everybody in the DA's office, so that they can see how parents feel when their kid becomes system involved, and understanding what these parents are going through. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive response. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So I want to thank you very much for coming out and speaking with our club today. I really appreciate you being here. I just want to say, for all of our members and everyone watching online, if you'd like to learn more about Terry Wiley, you can go to terrywiley4da.com. You can learn more there. You can have support. You can donate. I'm putting the link in chat as well for anyone who would like to go there. And so, again, thank you very much. Do you have any final words you'd like to say?
I would just hope that you all have a greater sense of who I am and what I stand for. I think that, a lot of people in this race are talking about change and what they want to do when they become the next district attorney. The reason I got 75% of the rank and file of the DA's office is because I've been doing the work for a long time. My first 15 years was spent trying cases, and I tried some of the most complex cases in the history of the county. And in the last 15 years, I've been developing by running all of the different divisions in the district attorney's office and creating new ones as the new director of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and developing new training programs for our lawyers to make us a better, more sensitive, compassionate office. But at the same time, developing our lawyers to be good lawyers, so that when you got to go into the courtroom and do your job, that you can do it according to the standard, the high standard that has been set by previous generations of Alameda County district attorneys. And we are the only district attorney's office in California that has 3 members of our office on the California Supreme Court. 2 now because Ming Chen retired, but it's a long history of Earl Warren is the first thing we tell DAs that come to Alameda County is we tell them the story of Earl Warren. So here's the story I got. So in 1925, the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, you could work as a district attorney 2 days a week, and the other 3 days you could go work as a defense attorney. So there's a lot of inherent conflicts in all of that. So Earl Warren said, no, well, I don't like this system that we currently have here in Alameda County. And frankly, there was a lot of corruption in Alameda County during that time. So Earl Warren said, went to the Board of Supervisors and said, I want to make the Alameda County DA's office only prosecutors. No more, you can split time as a defense attorney. So Alameda County formed one of the first professional prosecutors' offices. And because they were fighting so much corruption in Alameda County, he made ethics the number one, that was number one on the list. And so when I started in 1990, and I can remember me and Kamala are sitting in this courtroom, and the DA comes in and tells us the story of Earl Warren. And he says, look, your ethics are the number one thing that you are measured by in this office. And, and that's been something that I've tried to live by and tried to impart on our young lawyers that come up. And we tell them that, look, no case is worth your reputation. No case is so important that you have to cheat, lie, or steal to win it. And we believe in our prosecutors conducting themselves in a very ethical manner. I hope to lead the office and, continue the greatness of what I believe is the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you would like. And
I have to go back to I'm on a public meeting, and I got to go back to the public meeting. And I was supposed to be at 7:30, so they're saying, "Where's Terry?" So I got to get back to work.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Thank you for having me, everyone.
All right. And so changing tact a little bit, we are going to be talking now about our Giving Thursday plans. So like I said, we have 2 groups that we want to support, the Afghan Coalition and Wiley. Our hopes is that for those looking to do monetary contributions, you would contribute to the Afghan Coalition. For those of you looking to do physical goods, diapers and toys specifically, you would donate them to Wiley. And so with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Councilwoman Wahab to speak a little bit about the Afghan Coalition and why they would be a great charity for us to donate to.
Thank you, Evan. Sorry, I'm actually very excited to see you all. I'm very happy to be here. I'll just give a high-level overview of what the Afghan Coalition does. I am a board member of the Afghan Coalition. I have been a board member for, I'm going to say, over 10 years now. The nonprofit is based out in Fremont, California. It was started in 1996 by roughly a $10,000 grant from the Jewish Family Foundation, and has been serving new arrivals since 1996. It is the largest Afghan-run nonprofit serving mostly Afghans. The services that are provided by the Afghan Coalition range from just typical wraparound services, documentation support, immigration support, mental health support, therapy, and other services around domestic violence, divorce, childcare, pretty much anything that comes up within an Afghan arrival that they are struggling. Oftentimes, a lot of the local PD, if we do have an elder that is, let's say, having dementia or is lost or anything like that, oftentimes they will come to us to ask, can you help us find this individual? So the Afghan Coalition is very broad in the types of services. It is still a very small nonprofit. However, with the new arrivals, and I kind of want to talk about the immigration issues right now. Many of us have seen the news in mid-August that the capital of Kabul in Afghanistan fell to the Taliban. The honest truth is that it was actually taking place days and weeks prior. A lot of the Taliban came from the southern border in Pakistan and slaughtered hundreds and thousands of individuals in different border cities in Pakistan as well as in Afghanistan, largely killing men, women, and children. So the fall of Kabul was inevitable even days ahead. With so many people leaving, the United States government in the last 20 years offered Afghan nationals the opportunity to serve the United States military and government. The promise to these nationals was that if you are able to interpret, translate, and support our efforts in Afghanistan, you would be provided a green card or some type of status in the United States. Not only you, but your spouse and any child under the age of 21. This status was called the Special Immigrant Visa. Congress passed this, and it applies both to Afghan nationals as well as Iraqi nationals. Now, the Afghan Coalition has been working with Special Immigrant Visa recipients for several years. The difference from the last couple of years till now is the influx of the larger numbers in a rapid pace. It's actually pretty hard to keep up with. There's also not necessarily a very organized manner of what is happening. The United States State Department has actually suggested that no Afghan should be trying to resettle in California, with the primary reason that the cost of living and housing is too high. I think we all know that we as Americans struggle to pay our mortgage and rent. And for an Afghan with a family of potentially up to 6 people, their spouse and their multiple children, it would even be far more difficult. Usually the Special Immigrant Visa recipient is a male. These males range in age. However, most of them do speak English. Their wives do not. Their children do not. Our focus and effort, and what I suggest to a lot of people, is to definitely support the women and children arriving. Children within a year do bounce back pretty quickly once they're integrated into a school system. They can speak the language a little bit quicker too and adapt. However, the wives tend to become isolated. There is a huge cultural difference, obviously, between American culture and Afghan culture. In the sense that, they may not be able to work. They have left their families, their jobs, their entire network of support to come to a country that they do not speak the tongue, do not understand the system, and much more. There have been cases here in the Bay Area where some of these women have committed suicide via self-immolation. It is not covered in the news, but it is largely believed to be due to the fact that they are isolated. There are significant issues around that. Our job, for the most part, is we are working with the Jewish Family and Community Services very closely. They have been an excellent partner, both the Silicon Valley chapter as well as the East Bay chapter, as well as IRC. Those two are the two resettlement agencies in the Bay Area that really have jurisdiction about that. All the volunteers that they have relied on have largely been Afghan Americans that were born here or raised here. So it's a lot of young professionals have taken leaves of absences from their jobs and careers to be able to help these new arrivals. With that being said, these new arrivals are also very culturally different from the Afghan Americans born and raised here, as well as the Afghan Americans that came several generations ago. So from the 1979 Soviet invasion period. They tend to be more conservative because a lot of them did grow up in a place like Pakistan or under Taliban rule. They tend to be a little bit more religious. And the two waves of Afghans do not necessarily mix well with each other. I will also say that many people that have served the United States military, the reason why it's so important and so many of our veterans have stepped up to sponsor so many of them is because of the mere fact that if left in Afghanistan, by all standards of Afghan culture, whether you're talking about the Taliban or an everyday Afghan, what they did by supporting a foreign military operation is considered treason. And even a very well-developed country, treason is still punishable by death. And in Afghanistan, they will fulfill that. So their lives are truly at stake. And that is one of the reasons why so many people were looking to leave and why it's so important for us to be able to really allow them to integrate with our society. Now, California has been nothing but kind to arrivals and refugees and immigrants. We still have a long way to go, but far better than some of the other states where governors have actually tweeted that they do not want Afghans to enter their state. There has been rhetoric that these Afghans would be criminals, terrorists, rapists, you name it. And the honest truth is also that with the United States Department stating that California should not be a destination, there are huge Afghan hubs. The Alameda County area, even a little bit of the Tri-Valley, as well as even further out, is the largest home to the Afghan diaspora outside of Afghanistan. And they have been here for nearly 50 years. Largely known as Little Kabul, Fremont used to be home to many of them. However, during the Great Recession, many Afghans were priced out of Fremont and moved to places like Tracy, to Livermore, to Pleasanton, Dublin, Hayward, and even further out. These new arrivals that are coming are actually either being dropped off in Oakland with roughly $1,000 in their pocket and ending up homeless. A good chunk of Afghans are also coming into the Sacramento area, which a lot of the new arrivals have been making home for the last almost decade now, and in Contra Costa County, as well as a couple of other counties along the way to Sacramento County. The Afghan Coalition is actually spread very thin. They are working in all of these counties, but have less support in some of these counties. So Alameda County, for example, we have been having roughly every week / other week meetings with a couple of the supervisors as well as their staff, specifically as to how can we provide more and more support to these new arrivals. The city of Hayward, Newark, Union City, and Fremont have joined forces and have raised over $350,000 for these new arrivals. It is still not enough. And the reason why is because with thousands coming into our territory of, let's say, the larger Bay Area proper, there will be a burden on support services. these individuals do not qualify for the same type of services that even undocumented individuals qualify for in California. So they do not have an opportunity to be on Medi-Cal or any of these other services for a wide variety of reasons. Many of them do have healthcare problems. Many of them do have other needs. And the number one issue has been housing. Airbnb has partnered with the Afghan Coalition, but if we all know how Airbnb's model is that if we are able to find a spot, it may be for a week, it may be for a couple of days, it may be for a certain period of time. It is not continuous for over a month or 2 months or 3 months. That is our biggest problem. The second problem is largely that these individuals do not have a license, do not know how to drive here. So transportation has become a huge issue for them. We are looking to partner with Uber to provide some type of relief or voucher there where they can attend their appointments with their immigration attorneys, that they can potentially go out and look for a job. Jobs are the third problem. I will say that Alameda Labor Council has specifically reached out and stated that they are happy to try to find a way where they can get these new arrivals into apprenticeship programs. We all know that labor jobs are the quickest way to get into a middle income bracket. And it's still going to be a struggle because in Afghanistan, one person's salary can support a family of 4 to 6 people. We know that one person's salary here can barely, afford to support themselves. So there are some significant problems that we are facing. And I do want to say that I have heard a lot of rhetoric from a lot of people in a lot of meetings where oftentimes they ask, why should we help? How is this going to affect our city? This is another territory's problem, so forth. I want to make it very clear that as Afghans start to huddle in the cities that they feel the most comfortable with, which means larger Afghan population or stores or places of worship and so forth, they will also potentially increase the homeless population. No city council member, no supervisor, no resident would want an increase to our homeless population. And that is why it's imperative that we not only find housing for them, but also quickly get at least half of them into jobs that they can start to support themselves. Many Afghans will tell you they did not come here to beg. They came here to work hard and be a part of the American fabric. So the Afghan Coalition has largely done a significant amount of work in a very short period of time, to the point where Alameda County Supervisor David Halbert's staff has actually shared with me that they are looking to provide even support services for the Afghan Americans that are actually providing the support to these new arrivals, because they are working night and day. We are getting calls in the middle of the night where people are arriving, where, when they become homeless, if child welfare services get involved and the babies are taken from them, for foster parents, for, again, housing, it's a very vicious cycle if we are not able to support them very, very early when they come to the Bay Area. This is not only a problem here, it is a significant problem throughout all the other states as well. There are Afghan hubs in LA, in Sacramento, in the Bay Area, but also in Seattle, Washington, Virginia, Maryland, now Delaware, New York City, and a couple of other states. And there have been conversations. I know I've had conversations with the State Department, different groups from the White House, as to what can we do, how can we do it. And some of the needs and issues have been heard. For example, the forms that they have to fill out, it's $575 per person. This is a significant amount of money if you're talking about 6 individuals in one family. Things like this, there are efforts to waive some of these fees to really reconsider how this process is done. I think we can all understand the frustration with the withdrawal in Afghanistan, but also the follow through here in the United States has also been very difficult. So I would recommend everybody, at least, when people ask, how can we help? Definitely a donation to the Afghan Coalition is extremely beneficial. I would also say kindness and ensuring that if you do come across a new arrival, to invite them over, try to engage with them, have the kids go to, the soccer club, sponsor a family, just, being cordial, if you will. I think that goes a significantly long way. And there are significant problems that we are facing, but I am extremely proud of the community here in the Bay Area and the larger California state, where people are stepping up, and even governments are also investing significantly to provide more services for these new arrivals. I'm also happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I think hopefully it's obvious why we chose the Afghan Coalition as where we really would like to ask everyone, if you're doing a monetary donation, to please donate to them. We will be doing a big push through the month to try to get as much as we can. I'll talk some more about that after we have our next presenter. But did anyone, it looks like we do have a question for Councilwoman Wahab.
Evan, will you entertain a motion to give the Afghan Coalition some money from the club treasury? And I would say $250. I would move to do that. You entertain that motion?
We have to see how much we have in there.
Yeah, let's wait for the treasurer's report on that. And then,
Yes.
Okay, so we can do that during the treasurer's report?
Yeah.
Okay,
Or Jewish Family Services, if they're the one that's helping them.
well,
yeah, I'm willing to entertain that. And we talk about that during the treasurer's report to make sure we have the money.
sounds
Thank you. And then next, we have Councilwoman Arkin is going to present on Hively, who is our goal to raise physical goods for. So Councilwoman Arkin, if you'd like to take it away.
Great, thank you, Evan. Yes, I'd be happy to discuss Hively and tell everybody a little bit about what we do. I work for Hively. It is a nonprofit, and we are the resource and referral agency that serves the Tri-Valley. So Pleasant and Livermore, Dublin, and Sunol. And our main function of Hively is we are one of the resource and referral agencies in Alameda County that provide subsidized childcare to those families that qualify for it. And as you all probably know, childcare is very expensive. And for families that qualify, it really is a lifeline to them to be able to work, since they need childcare, people to watch their kids while they work or go to school. So that is the primary function of Hively. That is how Hively started. We also do mental health. We do have a mental health clinic. We are expanding the mental health as well. But Hively is a whole lot more. We have really become a major resource for families in need in the Tri-Valley. One of the things we do is we have a diaper program that we do provide diapers on a monthly basis, diapers and baby wipes to those families that are in need. And I can tell you, we give out a lot of diapers every single month. And we are always in need of diaper donations all year round. So it's another thing that's very expensive to families, and we're happy to be able to provide that. One of the other things we do is we are going to be opening a family resource center in Dublin. They're busy getting it ready. It's not quite ready yet, but it will be open in the very near future. And that is what our diaper program will be run out of that area. We will also have a commercial refrigerator where we will give out food, and we also give out food year-long too to families that request it. But we will expand our food program as well at our resource center. We will also have like a community closet, which we have done before, but we did have to close that when COVID hit. But we take clothing donations and small household items, dishes or whatnot. And we give those free of charge. So nobody has to go and pay for any of those things like at some of the thrift shops. So that is what our resource center will be doing in the very near future here. Hopefully by the end of the year, but early next year at the latest. So when Evan started talking about nonprofits to give to in the Tri-Valley, we serve a lot of families in the Tri-Valley, and diapers is something we can always use, but we will also be doing, like we do annually, a toy drive. And we collect brand new unwrapped toys for families in need that are in our programs. I can tell you it's really nice to be able to help families. I've always helped with that every year. And, otherwise they don't have a lot to buy for their kids at Christmas or Hanukkah or what have you. So those are two things that we could really be in need of. But if anybody has any questions about any, I'm happy to answer any questions. Our website is behively.org. So BEHIVELY.org. And you can also get my information and reach out to me, email, call, whatever, if you want more information about Hively or any other ways you can help. And yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it looks like we do have a question from Marisol.
Good evening, council member. How are you?
I'm doing
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you.
Great, great. So thank you, by the way, for introducing us to this program. One of the questions I've always had as somebody who obviously raised a child with disabilities who fell kind of in that borderline range. Oftentimes what I struggled to find was daycare that would provide care to her, someone who perhaps has some complex medical history, but would provide still daycare for her despite her medical needs. Do you know if there's any, like, what the situation is now today in terms of these after school and daycare programs?
We have a dedicated employee at Hively. There's a whole department, but one specific employee she handles the whole database on childcare providers in the Tri-Valley. And so we are a referral agency. So even if somebody doesn't need the financial assistance, or should I say not qualify for the financial assistance part, anybody in the Tri-Valley can contact Hively to look for to get a referral to a childcare provider that fits the needs of their child and work schedule. They have, all kinds of providers, some that may, center-based or home-based, that may help with children with special needs, but also different schedules of parents, that work night shifts, things like that. They have a whole database for that. So we encourage people to contact us for any sort of referral with childcare.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much. Definitely something that's needed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And thank you, Councilwoman Arkin, for that presentation. And so our goal with this is really to bring opportunities for the Tri-Valley Democratic Club to work on some of our organizing, getting out there, spreading the message. And so we thought these two charities were incredibly deserving charities that we can help, that really are impactful at the local level. This is going to be our neighbors that are really going to benefit from the work that we do. And so we're going to have a push on social media. We're going to ask all of you to make a push as well to your friends, your fellows, your acquaintances, donate to these two groups and really help show that the Tri-Valley Dems is an organization that cares about our communities, that we are here to help those around us, and that we really want to support those in need. And so I ask everyone, if you can, to please, donate to both of these groups. We are looking, and I will get an update very soon. I'm working with Councilwoman Arkin as well as some of our leadership team to set a collection day so we can figure out a good day where we can gather the donations, the diapers, toys, any other goods that we're donating to Hively and bring them all over together. So trying to figure out a way to do that best with maintaining maintaining our COVID protocols and keeping everyone safe at the same time. So keep an eye on the social media, keep an eye on emails. You'll be getting a lot of updates from me and our social media team on basically how we can best donate to these two groups. But please, if you can support either, I strongly encourage everyone to, and to spread the word as far as and wide as you can. These are both well-established organizations with a long history of helping that have flown under the radar if you're not following the nonprofit world, I think. Or I found many people don't know about these two organizations, despite the incredible work they've been doing for many years at this point. Thank you again, and a special thanks to Councilwoman Arkin for serving with Hively and making sure to help them, and to Councilwoman Wahab for serving with the Afghan Coalition and helping them to be successful. So with that, I am going to postpone the bylaw amendment that I put forward. I'll discuss this with the executive team on whether the best course to move forward with them would be to do a workshop where we can, do a workshop, a special meeting, and pass the amendments there. For anyone who is interested in continuing to contribute to them, the link I sent out allows anyone to comment on them. So it is a Google document. You're welcome to make comments on them. If you need that link, just email me and I'll send it to you. Put in any comments, concerns, changes you'd like to see, anything that you didn't think might be appropriate in the changes I made. And we'll either bring it back in a future meeting or we'll do a workshop to finalize that. All of my changes were put in as comments. So make sure you do have comments on. You'll see all of my strike throughs, changes, anything that I was proposing from the work I did on them so far. Again, the goal is really to make sure we have a set of bylaws that can be used by myself as a roadmap, but also to any future president of the club, to really make sure that all of our practices, all of our, the general ways we run meetings, the general ways we perform are all actually codified into the bylaws, and to make sure we have just a clear kind of roadmap going forward. So unless I hear opposition, actually, suppose it's not in the bylaws, oddly, is what to do if we want to change the agenda. Perhaps I need to add that in, or we'll just live with it. But if there's no opposition, I'm going to just move that to a future agenda.
I have a point of information. I was looking at the website a few minutes ago, and I couldn't see where the bylaws are posted on the new website. Are they out there and I just couldn't find them? Or have we put them on the new website yet?
Yeah, they're out there. It's the last ones. It's actually right off the main page, and you'll see a drop down under About Us, and then Bylaws, and then Meetings.
Okay, I'll look there. Thank you.
Thanks,
I
Ellen.
think the drop down is under our club.
I didn't hear that, Sarah.
The drop down menu where you find the bylaws is called Our Club.
Oh, it's called Our Club. Okay,
You got
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Evan, did you need a motion or a second?
I don't know. Like I said, it's not in our bylaws to change the
All right,
agenda
so
on the
I'll make
fly,
a motion to make an adjustment and postpone for the next agenda item. And we'll just need a second.
I'll
This is
second that.
Second. Okay, there you go.
All right. I heard a lot of seconds. So a motion by Trustee Makashi, and I think, I don't know, Ellis was the
think-
loudest one.
Ellis was second.
Yeah.
So
All right. All
Kelly
in
made
favor?
the motion.
Aye.
All in
Aye.
favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right. Passes unanimously. We will push that off to a future agenda. With that, let's turn it over to Alan for the treasurer's report.
There, I'm unmuted. We didn't have any new members this month, and I think it sort of makes sense because it's the end of the year. I will be sending out a letter probably the Monday after Thanksgiving of to re-up for membership for next year, which leads me to what we have, which is 124 members total at the present time. There were 25 that didn't renew from last year, but then we picked up some from the previous year. So we're still better off than we were last year. I think last year we had 117, this year 124. Our ending balance, the only expense we had this month was the $500 donation we made to the Young Democratic Club. And our ending balance is $2,306.
All right, thank you. And then before Ellis goes with a motion that I think he has queued up, I want to make a suggestion for Ellis's motion. Since the goal of highlighting these two charities is really to get people to help donating and moving, instead of us making a direct donation to either of the two charities, I would recommend that we put aside some money for both of them as a matching donation. And so we say, as a club, we are willing to put up, $100 each, $200 each, whatever you think is appropriate. We're putting up money to match donations that club members are able to raise. So to really help support that motion of getting our community moving, not just the club donating directly. So if that sounds good to you, Alice, I would entertain a motion. If you're still there, I don't see you.
I have a question, a point of order, I guess. How do we track what people are doing online for direct donations?
I mean,
I'm not sure how we could track to match. Or are you saying we're just going to set a flat rate and say we will donate so much to each charity?
So the idea would be matching. We could ask the two groups. The Afghan Coalition would be the one we need some information to know. But honestly, the honor system is probably good enough for me. If people say they're donating, I'll trust them on that and we can match the funds. Since we're not looking at a multi-$1,000 donation, it's not a huge sum. And for Hively, since we're asking for physical goods, it would put us in a situation where I would speak with Alan, get the credit card, and whatever we have, we would go out and just purchase the matching supplies. Jeff?
Well, you have to have some limit on matching funds. If all 124 members give $100, that way exceeds the budget that we have.
Oh, yeah. The idea would be, I think, to set aside, say, like I said, $100 or $200 for each charity as matching. So our limit would be whatever we set today.
Let's do matching funds up to a certain amount, where we wouldn't be obligated to give more than a certain amount. But if the club members donate individually, we will match what they donate individually up to a total of, let's say, $200. And I think that makes more sense. Also gives a sense of commitment of the organization more than, it's easy to give money. It's not so easy to get people involved where they, write their own check.
It's possible that we could have something on our donation page that says we're giving $25 or $50 or whatever it is to the Afghan, whatever the name of the fund was. And that way Alan would know that, for example, if we gave $25, then the club gives $50 to that fund. But we would have to have a special checkoff box on our donation page where we normally pay dues. And in addition to the dues, we would make a donation to that. Does that seem like too big a headache, Alan?
It is. And the other thing is it would have to go through Square in a lot of cases. And if you do that, you've got the fees involved and stuff. And I think it's like Evan said, do more of an honor system of what people give. I don't know if there's a way of when people donate to just somehow notify the club that they donated, and then we will match
Or
it.
notify you or something.
Yeah,
that they-
something like that.
Yeah, send
think-
you an email.
Yeah, is that going to
Yeah.
be a big headache to you? You
No.
prefer that?
Because we're only
Okay.
doing it up to $200, and hopefully we can get that donated relatively quick.
Yeah, so I think let's take the discussion on the mechanics to the executive board, and so we can figure out the exact mechanics. But if we like the idea of doing a matching donation, I would definitely entertain a motion on that.
Okay, I make a motion that we allocate up to $250 in matching funds for the Afghan, what was it called?
So there's the
Coalition.
Afghan Coalition and Hively are the two charities.
Well, I would say $250 each for those two matching funds and go from there. The real fact of the matter is if you're going to buy diapers and then drag it over to Valerie's house, it's just as easy to have Amazon deliver it directly to wherever she wants us to deliver it to. Well, whoever we buy it from, Costco, whatever.
Okay, does that amount sound good to you, Alan? So it'd be $500
Yeah,
total.
because our treasury will start increasing shortly once we put out for the dues for 2021, 22.
Okay. Then do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you,
All
Jeff.
right. So we have the motion by Ellis, the second by Jeff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, then the motion passes unanimously. That moves us on to the approval of the October minutes. Jackie?
Okay, the minutes were attached to the agenda. Let's see if I can drop them down in here as well. Maybe not. Stand by.
Here you go.
Oh, drop them in there?
Yep.
Thank you. Do people need a moment to read through these? They were sent out. They've been reviewed by the executive committee. There wasn't any typos or anything. Last month, we had the Tri-Valley Housing Crisis Action Information. We did a meet and greet with another DA candidate, Jimmy Wilson. We did pass the resolution in support of the Afghan refugees. So I'm glad to see that the Afghan Coalition is on this month's agenda as well, following through with our support. We have our treasurer's report, the review of the September meeting, the special vote at the Alameda County Central Committee, all the information with the links to the Alameda County Central Committee, both the normal and special meeting, as well as links to our YouTube channel, and the full last month's meeting was uploaded on YouTube as well. Are there any additions, corrections, comments from anyone?
Another wonderful job by Jackie. Let's hear it for Jackie. I approve those minutes. Mr. Picky, the editor, professionally comes through with a big yes.
He's keeping me on my toes, I'll tell you that. I now double check my minutes twice.
Good for you.
The big question, Ron, is that also a motion for the minutes?
I motion this way. Yes, left and right. That we accept the minutes.
Thank you.
Do we
Is
have
there
a second?
Second,
Who is that,
Okay.
Alan?
yes.
You?
All right, so we have a motion by Ron, a second by Alan. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions?
I will abstain as secretary. This is Jackie.
All right, then the motion passes unanimously with one abstention. So with that, we've reached our normal stopping time, but I would like to give a moment for open forum if anyone does have any announcements that they'd like to make or items they'd like to see on a future agenda. Do we have any announcements from the club?
I spoke to Shirley Shelengowski yesterday, and apparently California Clean Money is mounting a campaign. And in fact, they had a Zoom meeting which overlapped with this Zoom meeting. What they're proposing as far as legislation is if there's a ballot measure that is described in the voter pamphlet, the names of the organizations sponsoring the ballot measure should also be included there. So if the Chamber of Commerce or PG&E or somebody like that is sponsoring a ballot measure, all the voters will be officially told through the voter pamphlet that those people are the sponsors. I took the liberty of asking Shirley to speak at our next meeting. I wasn't sure whether we're going to do December or the next one's going to be January. But anyway, that's kind of a heads up as to what's going on. You know that our former treasurer, Joe Ely, was very much involved with California Clean Money, and the club has backed their various campaigns, ballot measures in the past. So they're no strangers to the Tri-Valley Dems.
Yeah, that'd be great. Connect me with them, and definitely we'll get them on the agenda of our next meeting. Ron?
I have a question concerning next meeting. Do we plan to have a holiday meeting or a regular meeting for our December get together?
So we need to talk for a minute. So I think I'm going to adjourn this meeting and we'll stop recording here. And then I'd like to ask the executive committee to stay on for just a minute, because we've had some conversations and I want to, now that I have everyone here, instead of us